Hello everyone. I hope you all are doing well. Thank you for taking the time to watch my presentation. I just wanted to caution you as you listen to my presentation, you may feel some type of way due to the content of my research, which deals with racism against the Black body. If you need to take a break while watching this video, please feel free to do so. Taking care of yourself is very important, especially in the times we're in right now. My poster is entitled Exclusion of the Included, an analysis of racialized microaggressions at predominantly white institutions. This work is independent research I conducted in the fall 2019 as the basis for my honors thesis. I decided to examine racism in the site of higher education because of an interaction I had a year ago. As a member of the Student Alumni Association, I went to a meeting at the end of the semester thinking it would be a normal meeting to close out the year. Instead, my boss, who at the time was a white woman, asked me, "Why don't Black alumni donate?" I was taken aback by her question for multiple reasons, but what I took away from her question was her lack of understanding of the Black student experience, which may impact their behavior and relationship with their institution once they become alum. From that interaction, I decided to dive deeper into racialized experiences in undergraduate institutions from a sociological perspective. My primary question for this body of research is, why and how are Black undergraduates experiencing racism on college campuses if we live in a so-called post-racial society? Although there is plenty of research on the specific topic of racial discrimination against Black students in college, majority of my sources begin from the early 2000s and up to highlight contemporary ideologies of race and racism. For example, Eduardo Bonilla Silva's 2003 text, Racism Without Racist, exposes how overt racism during slavery and the era of Jim Crow were extremely overt. Signage describing who was not allowed into different businesses were the norm. Today, we don't need that signage. Covert racism, or colorblind racism, is different because some people don't acknowledge race, period. They might say, "I don't see color," or "we all have equal rights." This type of coded language allows people to be racist and say racist things in a sly way that doesn't always seem racist. Often, those who are racially colorblind will believe society is post-racial and that society and race no longer matters. This lens of thinking erases centuries of struggle and oppression that are still present today. Depending on one's social location, having this vantage point in society ignores the inequality others experience at a structural and individual level. In the academic setting, racism still runs rampant on college campuses all over the U.S. They can range from physical, verbal, or even psychological abuse. This makes sense when you step back and see that racism isn't exempt from social institutions such as education. Typically, racial discrimination is analyzed in higher education through microaggressions. The theory I used to apply my research was racial microaggression theory from Charisse Levchak's 2013 article and an examination of racist and sexist microaggressions on college campuses. She states that racialized microaggressions can be expressed verbally and visually in both covert and overt ways. For example, multiple visual racial microaggressions have been cited at American University in Washington, D.C. Once, Confederate flag posters with pieces of cotton stuck to them were posted on campus in 2011, and nooses with bananas hanging from poles were found in 2017. Her definition highlights the fluidity of microaggressions, which can happen at any time and any place. The environment in which Black students are learning in can be hostile, which negatively impact students by causing feelings of frustration, anger, sadness, belittlement, and alienation, which can lead to depression, anxiety, and trauma. Combining colorblind racism ideology with racial microaggression theory helped me frame my research questions I asked. To further investigate the experiences of Black students attending PWIs in the Northeast, my research study consists of qualitative analysis and the method of photo elicitation. I conducted in-depth and semi-structured interviews with 19 students in total. Photo elicitation includes the process of having participants take photographs at important sites related to the study to help explain their experience through their eyes instead of the researcher assuming things from their participants. I asked students to take photos of sites where they believed they were racially discriminated against at their university. In order to participate, students had to be at least 18 years of age, completed 1 month of undergraduate studies, and identify as a Black person. The college in which I conducted my research remained anonymous due to its small size of enrollment to protect the participants. The reason why I limited my research to one racial group was because race is incredibly complicated to tackle and dissect. It would be unfair to combine the experiences of different racial groups into one story, especially since different racial and ethnic groups experience racism very differently from one another, which can be further analyzed in Vilna Treitler's 2013 text, The Ethnic Project. I contacted professors, staff, and student-based organizations to inquire with their students if they would be interested in participating. With the completion of 2 interviews and photo elicitation process, students were compensated for their efforts. The demographics that participated showed a diverse representation of students within the university. Majority of the respondents were women, while only 4 identified as men. There were domestic and international students, those that resided in the dorms and lived off campus, those that originally began their undergraduate career at the school, while others transferred in. There was representation from all class years as well. After transcribing and coding the interviews, I was able to find themes that emerged from the data. The students described issues such as lack of support from their institution, experiencing fewer privileges than their white peers, and direct racial microaggressions from faculty, staff, and students. The students experienced distrust with their school's administration due to the lack of resources available. They felt as though the university said it was diverse, but they didn't always feel that diversity, nor if it was always welcomed or celebrated. One distinction that was made between the upperclassmen and lowerclassmen students was that diversity within their class years was so drastic that you could tell the university actively recruited to bring in more Black people with the incoming classes in comparison to the older ones. The concept of privilege was talked about in many interviews, and participants stated that they knew they could not get away with certain things pulled off in class like their white peers do. Participants also shared the burden they felt in the classroom when the discussion had anything to do with Blackness or Black history because the professor and other students would look to them to speak on the issue. Although this counted for very few experiences in the study, some students also shared how living in the residence halls gave them anxiety when a white person would ask them questions about their wardrobe and usage of slang. Students also shared the anger and frustration they felt when they would hear a non-Black student say the N-word. Although not every student had the same exact experience, it was clear that all of the participants in the study had believed their race caused an issue for learning and thriving at the school. Some found outlets like clubs or adults they could count on to share their feelings, but many expressed that if I had not done this project, that they would have kept these emotions internal. Although this body of research needs to be continued, I have come up with suggestions that predominantly white institutions can take into account moving forward. As campuses evolve, they should be constantly implementing feedback from students to make the community stronger and a better place for everyone. First, when a crisis happens on campus, the administration should be open to listening to those who have been affected. For example, students in the study discussed a time when a Black Lives Matter sign was defaced at the university and an email was sent out in the aftermath, not really addressing the point of racism. When issues arise, and they always do, it is crucial that the community who was hurt gets to have their voices implemented in the steps moving forward. Second, although we entrust faculty and staff to guide and be leaders of students, they too can fall short in and outside of the classroom due to their own implicit bias. Implicit bias trainings are essential in higher education to do because it reminds people that they may stereotype others without even realizing it. One student in my study told me about an interaction between her and her professor during office hours. The professor asked her during her first year if she she was supposed to be in college, and if it was the right move for her. Due to her lack of understanding of the assignment, the professor doubted her capabilities in completing this level of education. After explaining to her that both of her parents went to college in and outside of the United States, the professor moved on to help explain the assignment to her. Interactions similar to that were extremely common in the study. Third, recognizing that the administration is only one part of any university is important and it can't operate alone. Different campus departments are vital to running a university. Coming together to make a commitment to stating that they want to improve racial climate and tensions will allow the university to make strides without leaving out certain areas of the institution. This would look like increasing diversity among the student body in addition to faculty and staff. Students in the study complained how representation was so few in both the STEM, the humanities, and social sciences that they felt isolated in their academic majors. In conclusion, racial discrimination on college campuses is highly present today because we are not in a post-racial society. Racism still exists, therefore, we must expose and eradicate it in all social institutions in our society. Higher education is a site where racialized experiences can be analyzed with the hopes of making change on college campuses for the better. If you're interested in learning more about my research, you are more than welcome to contact me or attend my thesis defense next month, which will happen via Zoom. Please let me know if you have any other questions. Thank you for listening.